My name is Evan from the Lonely Stoner podcast, and today I'm going to be giving you a UFC 320 breakdown post-mortem. Ankalaev versus Pereira. I will start with, to be honest, I didn't see anything below the main event, but I will talk a little bit about the results that matter. Edmund Shabazian beating Andre Muniz. That puts Edmund on a pretty decent win streak, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 3-fight win streak, beating some decent names in the division. I mean, Andre Petrosky is kind of just one of those unranked guys you see pop around every now and again. And then Andre Muniz, which isn't a bad win, to be honest, by KO in the first round too. So he should definitely be looking for a matchup that's going to allow him to get up in the upper echelons of the middleweight division. And he's still very young, only 27 years old. You know, he's lost to Gerald Meerschaert, which is a horrible loss. He's lost to Fluffy, which ain't bad. Lost to Imamov, which ain't bad. Hermansson, which isn't bad. And Brunson, which isn't bad. All very early in his career. And he was done dirty with those matchups, you know. He was undefeated. You know, beat Brad Tavares, which is one of those wins you beat him and then you get a ranked opponent back in those times. Then he lost to Derek Brunson, who's a tough out for anyone. Jack Hermansson, who's a tough out for anyone. And Imamov, who wasn't quite what he is now then, but of course it's a loss that hasn't aged badly. And then losing to Fluffy and then GM3, which isn't great, but yeah, he should be looking for maybe someone just outside the rankings or somebody that's going to get him a fight. You know, if he were to win, then he'd definitely get a ranked matchup. That's what Edmund Shabazian should be looking for next. And Andre Muniz, either give him an up-and-coming middleweight or Apex prelims for you, buddy. And then next one is Jakub Wiklax defeating Patchy Mix. Yeah, Patchy Mix, center PFL 2 or 3 years and forget. Yeah, this guy ain't UFC caliber, bro. I don't know how this guy amassed a record beating guys like Magomedov outside the UFC and Rafael Stotts and these sort of guys. And then guys who, have fought high-level competition in the UFC and given them good fights. And then he comes to the UFC, throws the fight versus Mario Bautista and loses a split decision to a guy making his UFC debut. As far as I'm concerned, you couldn't have given him a nicer matchup, and unless Jakub Wiklax is the next up-and-coming ranked contender at bantamweight, then this isn't a very good performance for Patchy Mix, and I'd get rid of him, to be honest. He doesn't fight excitingly either, you know. And I did see the highlights for this, Daniel Santos versus Yuju Sang. They call him the Asian Mike Tyson or something like that. Yuju Sang, he got knocked out. He was putting the hands on him, on Daniel Santos, but Daniel Santos was able to find him and finish him brutally. Again, I didn't watch the full fight, I only saw some highlights on Insta, so I ain't going to act like I fully know what happened, but yeah, I don't really know who either these guys are, so there you go. Next one, Ateba Abega Gautier. I remember talking about him in one of my recent side quests. Big guy, just knockout artist. They need to stop giving him guys who he's just obviously going to knock out in the first few minutes, sacrificial lambs. He needs to fight somebody who has 6, 7, 8 plus UFC fights. Maybe not that many, but somebody with a good handful of UFC fights with a mix of wins and losses. Somebody who, you know, okay, if you beat them, you can get some higher echelon matchups at middleweight. Maybe put him against Edmund Shabazian, seeing as I think they both should be looking for similar sort of opponents. But at the same time, I feel like Ateba would smoke him, and Edmund, given the right matchups, can be ranked, Edmund. So I'd give Edmund a sort of a favourable matchup for him, and give Ateba Abega Gautier an older guy who's an older middleweight. I don't know, not a GM3 because he'd smoke GM3. That wouldn't even be fair. Maybe who's the guy Joe Pyfer knocked out that one? Botello, something like that. Give him Bruno Ferreira, something like that. You know, one of those guys who are always edging themselves with the rankings, always just about getting outside the rankings and then losing. You know, give him one of those guys, and then maybe he'll be ranked, maybe he'll fight a ranked contender after that. But if we were looking at ranked contenders for him to fight, I wouldn't really say there's any. I wouldn't put him up against Pyfer. I wouldn't put him up against a Vettori. Maybe put him up against a Vettori, see if Vettori can take the power. But even then, I'd say Vettori versus Pyfer would probably be a decent matchup. But yeah, no. Give Ateba Abega Gautier one of those borderline ranked opponents, because he's just smoking all of these guys. Or give him a guy who's been about in the UFC, but not that good. Just let him fight somebody better than these bums he's just been knocking out in the first few minutes. And then we move on to the main card. Joe Pyfer beating Abus Magomedov by a face crank in the second round. More of a rear naked choke. Wasn't under the chin, so technically a face crank. Really impressive performance from Pyfer. The first round, it was clear that he had like... Pyfer has insane power, by the way, but it was clear that Abus wasn't really trying to mess with that. He was able to get some grappling going, and Abus won the first round, I would say. And Pyfer came back, and he didn't have the mindset of, let me just knock this cunt out. Like, he was calm and collected still. He was making conscious decisions in there. And when it got to the ground, you could see it again, the improvements, the way he put on the body triangle, and he wasn't fully on the back, and then he adjusted himself, got a better grip, got a better position on the back, pulled Abus to where he wanted him, and Abus wasn't able to get out, and he face cranked him. Good win for Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer, there's a lot of guys he could fight in middleweight. I would definitely put him up against a striker, which most guys are in the middleweight division, but definitely have him against a striker because he's going to put on exciting matchups. Vettori wouldn't be bad because Vettori, nobody's able to hurt Vettori, and if that would be a good tester, is Joe Pyfer able to hurt Vettori? And Vettori's on a bit of a losing streak. You could have him fight Costa, but Costa's, no guarantee Costa's even going to show up. Plus, Costa's probably going to want to be fighting upwards, not downwards. Could give him a Roman Dolidze, could give him a Jared Cannonier. No one really above that for Joe Pyfer. So Joe Pyfer looking for a guy in 10 to 15 striker. Yeah, that would definitely work. But good win from Joe Pyfer. Impressive. I was impressed. And his loss to I just said his name. Swedish brother, Jack Hermansson. That's it. Not Swedish, Norwegian or something like that. Yeah, that's not looking like such a bad loss, and he's gone down to welterweight now to fight Oralby, which is crazy. Jack Hermansson has. Yeah, so weird, but good win from Joe Pyfer. Look for a guy in that 10 to 15 range. You get a dirty knockout over one of those guys. You fight someone in the top 10, borderline top 5. You get another dirty knockout. Or depending on the way things are at middleweight, could be looking for a title shot. But as I've said in my last side quest, I don't think anybody is doing anything at middleweight in the near future. Next one, featherweight, Yusuf Zalal versus Josh Emmett. This was an incredibly, easy victory for Yusuf Zalal. They had almost 20, 30 seconds of striking. Josh Emmett went for a big meaty hook, as he does. Zalal easily reads it, beautifully shoots underneath, gets a takedown, a little bit of scrambling on the ground. Zalal ends up on bottom, armbar. Emmett's trying to pull his arm out, but he's using his other arm in there trying to figure out a way to get out, but he wasn't able to, and he was forced to verbally tap. Very good, very impressive win from Yusuf Zalal. Made Josh Emmett look easy. A lot of guys have fought Josh Emmett, and a lot of guys have had trouble with Josh Emmett. And Zalal's made it look incredibly easy. There's something to be said about that. Josh Emmett's a top 10 ranked opponent, and Zalal's finished him in less than 2 minutes. So there isn't really much to say because not much happened. So I guess I'll move on to who Zalal should be fighting next. If I look at the guys above him, Aljo will not take that fight. Maybe he would. If he would, then that's the fight I'd make out of these guys. But I don't think he will. Lerone Murphy, no. Yair, I would do a Yair actually. Yair would be good, but I don't think Yair's going to take that fight because he's a bitch. Diego Lopez, no. Movsar, no. In terms of below him, you know what? Even though Jean Silva's a rank 10, I reckon if Zalal got offered the Jean Silva fight, he'd probably take it. Brian Ortega too. Simply because Jean Silva still has a lot of hype on his name, and I feel like if you're able to beat Jean Silva, that's going to get you a nice position. Brian Ortega would be not a bad matchup, but he fought not too long ago, and I don't know, he's just a bit weird, Brian Ortega. I don't know what he's doing. Arnold Allen would be a good one, because he's not fought in ages. So either Yair, because Yair doesn't deserve any sort of title shot. There's 3 guys in the pecking order above Yair Rodriguez. 4, potentially, actually, who would deserve a title shot before Yair. So definitely Yair should be looking for a matchup. Yeah, if you group together Yair, Arnold Allen, Brian Ortega, Jean Silva, and Yusuf Zalal, all those guys should find fights with each other, really. In that little range there. Even though Yair is somehow ranked 3, he's going to pull the card of I'm ranked 3. I only want to fight somebody who's going to get me a title shot. That's why I don't like Yair Rodriguez. Moving on to the next one. My favourite fight of the night. Crazy fight. Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Ended in a round 3 KO for Jiri Prochazka. I'll break down the fight a little bit first. I'll give my thoughts afterwards because I have a lot of thoughts. So the first round starts. Essentially, think about what Khalil was doing to Jamal Hill. But imagine Jamal Hill was being way more aggressive and was getting tagged way more. But was getting dropped less. That's how the first 2 rounds went. Khalil almost has these like preset animation combinations. He'll come in, like hook, body hook, leg kick, body kick, hook, overhand. Right, he has these sort of set combinations that he does. Jiri was having a lot of problems with that because Khalil was reading his movement coming in, and he was tagging him a lot. And you could see Jiri not getting hurt, but getting incredibly frustrated that he's not able to put his work on Khalil, and he's not able to really avoid much of what Khalil's throwing his way. However, after being down undisputedly 2 rounds, in my opinion, in the 3rd round, it's clear that the pace has gassed Khalil out. Because even though over 5 rounds against Jamal Hill, he was able to win pretty much every single round and knock Jamal Hill down multiple times from, I think, round 1 to like round 3 or round 4. And even though he looked good cardio-wise in that fight, the pace in this fight was so much higher that by the 3rd round, he was gassed. Khalil Rountree was totally tired. He had nothing left. And because I don't think he has the mid-fight game plan in to go, okay, I'm gassed. If I carry on moving forward and fighting, I'm probably going to get finished. So let me use my footwork, circle out, use my head movement, block, and try and take as little punishment as possible. Khalil Rountree does not do that. Instead, he keeps walking straight towards Jiri, hands damn near down, throwing back at Jiri, landing back at Jiri as well, landing big shots on Jiri. Even though he's gassed, so the power is reduced, he's throwing back at Jiri and landing big. But Jiri, still energetic, he's moving around, he's switch stancing, throwing combinations, dirty elbows, and then it ends with Khalil up against a cage, completely battered, beaten, and gassed. And Jiri just lands a beautiful right-left hook combination, puts Khalil out flat on his face. One of the best comeback victories you'll see in the UFC. Jiri was already one of my favourite fighters, but he may have ascended to my absolute favourite fighter now. Because not only does he have the personality, which is it's different, right? Because you see guys like Conor, you see other guys who, like even like Ilya, for example. Like these guys, they're cool, they have aura, like they say shit and they do it, but you can tell like they're putting it on a little bit, right? You can tell that they're not just being themselves, like they're being a bit animalistic, a bit energetic, a bit disrespectful because for the sake of the fight, for the sake of the opponent. But Jiri is completely and utterly himself in his interviews and any media that he does. Like he has such a likable personality, but at the same time embodies that warrior spirit so much. And yeah, like if you watch all of Yuri's interviews, it's hilarious, man. Hilarious interviews. Like, let's go for that. Like, love all of that. I will take some guys from my village, take them to the hotel room. I will show them something. Yeah. Sure thing, Jiri. Crazy, but aside from his sus antics, Jiri Prochazka in this fight, unbelievable. Got fight of the night bonus and a performance bonus, well deserved, because Jiri is the man. Like, if Pereira wasn't just Pereira, like Jiri would be dominating this division. He has only lost to Pereira, which is crazy to me. And they were both in brutal fashion as well, which it makes sense they ended that way because Pereira's so much more seasoned and so much more trained in the striking, and of course that fight's never hitting the mat. Even though a guy like Jiri Prochazka won his title by submitting Glover Teixeira in the 5th round. You think maybe he should use it a little bit. Then this is what I said before about, not to get sidetracked too much, but this is what I said before about the Pereira thing. You'd think, even if you look at a guy like Jamal Hill, Khalil, and Jiri Prochazka, most of his fights at light heavyweight, you'd think even if you're a striker and you don't have much grappling experience, you'd think that those guys would still try and use the grappling, because cool, even if you're not successful in the grappling, which if you are successful, great, that speaks for itself, but if you're not successful in the grappling, you're at least putting that in Pereira's mind, which is going to not make him as free in the striking, which we saw in the first Ankalaev match. But, you know, to actually get back to it, you got a guy like Jiri fighting a guy like Khalil. It's never hitting the mat. Amazing fight, back and forth. 3rd round, I was, you know, I didn't watch this one live, but it was 7:30 in the morning and I was jumping around like a maniac watching this back because I didn't know the result. Amazing fight. What's next for Jiri? That's a very good question to me. I didn't even say what was next for Josh Emmett. Give Josh Emmett some lower ranked guy coming off a loss. Anyway, what's next for Jiri? It's really tough because what's next for Jiri almost links into what's next for Alex Pereira. So I will save Jiri and Khalil for the main event in terms of next matches. So I'll go to the co-main event, which is probably the most predictable MMA fight of the year. Merab Dvalishvili defeats Corey Sandhagen by unanimous decision, 49-45, 49-45, 49-46. The only thing that wasn't predictable about this fight is Merab rocking Corey Sandhagen on the feet and having the best moments on the feet. And it wasn't sort of a Khabib Conor moment where he just flung out a wild overhand, flash knockdown, Conor straight back up, and then we get into grappling sequences. It was, you know, Corey got hit with, I think it was a left hook, and his legs were very wobbly. They were not under him. Merab was wailing away at him up against the cage. But also, little sidetrack again. If somebody's super rocks and they're up against the cage, somebody should make an idea to like pull the guy into the middle or something, because that cage is always holding these guys up. And that's the big reason why the refs don't step in these moments, because the cage is holding them up. Like, why don't we, like, rock somebody, maybe quite badly, and then we don't rush them up against the cage straight away. Try and pick your shots in the middle of the cage, because it's only going to take 1 or 2 to really put them down and stop the fight. Anyway, sidetrack over. Back to Merab versus Corey. But yeah, he hurt Corey, had him up against the cage, was wailing on him up against the cage, but wasn't able to finish him, and essentially just dominated via a mix of striking and grappling and shooting takedowns. You know, however you imagined Merab to win is pretty much how he won. There isn't much to be said about this. Merab's dominance continues. He is undeniably the greatest bantamweight of all time, in my opinion. You know, because I look at the guys that you might say, TJ Dillashaw, his resume doesn't match up, plus he popped. Dominic Cruz, resume nowhere near matches up. Uriah Faber, if you're not saying Dominic Cruz, you're definitely not saying Uriah Faber. Piotr Jan's probably the only one that matches up, to be fair. And then O'Malley, definitely not. Aljo's also got a pretty decent case there, to be fair. But the way he won it, second fight versus Piotr Jan, the way Merab wins his fights and the names he has on his resume, Merab is undoubtedly the greatest bantamweight of all time, in my opinion. He beaten number 1 Sean O'Malley, beaten number 2 Umar, beaten number 3 Piotr Jan, beaten number 4 Corey Sandhagen. I don't know if he's fought Song Yadong. I don't think so. He's definitely not fought Davison Figueiredo either. So he's beaten like the top 4 guys in the division. And now the next matchup for him, in my opinion, isn't moving up to featherweight. It's a rematch against Piotr Jan. Piotr Jan, I would pick Merab in that rematch, because although Pereira's shown us that rematches don't always go the way the first one does, Piotr Jan kind of fights the same in every fight, but he's just so good that it's very hard for guys to beat him. But I think what was shown in the rematch of Aljo, his fight with Merab, and his fight with O'Malley, which was very close, is that you kind of know what he's going to do. You know he's going to download data in that first round and take it slow, and then he's going to speed up a bit. Like, you know he's going to do that. The game plan is the same for every fight, but theoretically that game plan does beat everybody, but it's just he's been like really unlucky, and he could have done more with his game planning for sure. But if you look at the fight with Merab, again, my point still stands that I think somebody should get more credit for defending all those takedowns than you'd give to the other guy simply for shooting them. Although I understand aesthetically it doesn't look great having somebody, shoot takedowns on you constantly, be aggressive, be offensive, and be holding you up against the cage. I understand that's not a good aesthetic, that's not a good look. However, let's be real. Like, defending a takedown is harder than shooting a takedown, in my opinion. Completing a takedown is is harder than defending a takedown, I think. However, if you watch Merab fight, you know that all the takedowns he shoots, some of them are just to fill a gap of empty space. Sometimes it's to close the distance. Sometimes it's just to be offensive and just to keep the other guy busy or get him tired. I mean, Merab doesn't shoot all these takedowns with the 100% conviction inside himself that I'm going to complete this takedown. So, what was I even talking about? Oh yeah, no. So because of that, in my opinion, like, it does depend on the fight, but you should get more credit for defending the takedowns, in my opinion, especially when you're defending like 30, 40 takedowns. Like, if we have 5 minutes of a round, and they've landed 10 significant strikes each, control time is like 20, 30 seconds a piece, around the same, but Merab has shot 11 takedowns and Petr Yan defended all of them. The real judges would give the edge to Merab because he's being more offensive, but in my opinion, I'd give more credit to Petr Yan for defending those takedowns. And I think the rules of MMA and some other things have allowed Petr Yan to be really unlucky in his fights, but I honestly give him the best chance to beat Merab out of anyone in this division. Maybe Umar, to be honest, because Umar is more, not dynamic, but dynamic in terms of his decision making and his game planning. And I think he mixes it up a little bit better than Petr Yan. But Petr Yan is so good. I don't think Merab can touch, because Petr Yan isn't scared to be taken down. And he isn't a guy that's going to have worse striking simply because he's watching out for the takedown. So I think on the feet, Merab doesn't want it with Yan. It's just constantly shooting takedowns, which essentially forces the judges to give it to Merab, because there was no time for Petr Yan to really do much, because he's just constantly being shot on. So that's the fight that definitely needs to happen next. Petr Yan needs a little bit more finishing potential if he wants a chance as well, because trying to rely on yourself to win a 5-round decision against Merab, that's not a good game plan for anyone in bantamweight. Anybody. Definitely Petr Yan next for Merab. And for Corey Sandhagen, maybe a rematch of Umar. Sean O'Malley would be a great fight. I have no idea what's going on with Sean O'Malley though. He does not seem like he wants to fight at all. Get him out the rankings. So Corey could fight Umar. He could fight, I think Song Yadong just got booked against somebody, I think. And Mario Batista as well. Maybe Figueiredo. I think, no, he fought Figueiredo last, or a couple of fights ago. So, I don't know. Yeah, give him Umar, I guess. Umar rematch. And then moving on to the main event, Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Of course, another fight where there isn't really too much to say about it because it ended so quickly. However, Alex Pereira knocking out Magomed Ankalaev in around a minute and a half. So, fight starts, Alex Pereira instantly takes the front foot, gets in front of that black line as quickly as he can. Ankalaev is clearly surprised by this because he was like moving around really nervously and weirdly, like he had no idea what Pereira was going to do next. And then Pereira just being aggressive. Inside low kick, which apparently Pereira broke his foot on. The way he was dancing afterwards, though, I don't think so, mate. I think he was trying to get a little bit more time off, but apparently broke his foot on that inside low kick, but forced Ankalaev to switch stances to orthodox, in which Pereira was able to find a big right hand, hurt Ankalaev. Ankalaev panicked shooting a takedown. Pereira had it red all day long, framed off of him, got top-ish position, threw shitloads of hammer fists, and started with the 12-6 elbows through the guard. and then the fight was over. This is a very strange situation because I see people calling it a early stoppage. I thought it was a late stoppage. Pereira landed at least 15 or 20 unanswered shots. Ankalaev was not moving around. He was not trying to get his guard back. He was not using his legs. He was not framing off of Pereira. He was not looking for submissions. He was not trying to get back up. He was in that exact same position, blocking, trying to move his head away from the punches, constantly getting hit, elbow. Bad stoppage in my opinion. Should have been earlier. Fight should have been stopped earlier. I get he wasn't out cold, but what? Is that what it takes? Somebody has to be out cold for the fight to be stopped? I mean, no. Definitely not. But yeah, great win from Pereira. Yeah, faith has been restored in MMA. We have no more Dagestani champions, at least until Jack Della fights Islam. But yeah, no Dagestani champions. Faith has been restored. And what is next for Pereira? Aspinall. That's what's next. We need a generational super fight. We haven't had a generational super fight in so long. I mean, what was the last generational super fight? I'm even trying to think. No, I don't. If you guys sort of know what the last generational... I'm thinking Conor Khabib. Conor Khabib is the last fight that I'm thinking. That was 7 years ago as well. That's sort of the last fight that I'm thinking in my head. Yeah, that's a generational super fight. Some people would say John Jones versus Cyril Gane simply because it's Jones' heavyweight move, but super fight, not super fighter. Do you know what I mean? So, this would be the biggest fight in UFC history. Pereira looking for a third title, the first time anybody would be fighting for a potential third championship inside the UFC. And of course, fighting a guy in Tom Aspinall, who's the heavyweight champion. I think he's going to beat Cyril Gane, so we're just using Tom Aspinall as the placeholder. Yeah, that's what I want to see next. Would be incredibly interesting. And of course, I think we know if Tom wants it over in the first round, then it will be, because all he has to do is rugby tackle him. Pereira won't be able to stop the takedown and then submit him like he's done to other guys. But I reckon Tom would give him a chance in the striking. I think Tom's a sportsman. I think he'd want to see what Pereira's got for him. He'd probably take a low kick or two and then decide, nah, I don't want any of that. But that's what I want to see next, man. White House card, whatever the fuck you need to do, bro. Get that fight made, because that's generational. And I didn't think Pereira was going to win against Ankalaev. So that's why that thought wasn't really in my mind. But when Pereira did win, and then I look at the fights that you could potentially have next at light heavyweight, I'm thinking there isn't anything here too interesting. I mean, we go to light heavyweight. He could fight Jiri for a third time. I don't even want to see that for Yuri's sake. He could fight Ankalaev again for a third time. In my opinion, that's not warranted, because if we go to a razor close decision in the first fight, and then I rematch you and knock you out in a minute, for me, that's it. That's settled. The first fight was an off night for Pereira, a good night for Ankalaev, but wasn't much splitting them apart. And then in the second fight, Pereira absolutely destroys Ankalaev, and Ankalaev doesn't even get any offense in. So that's why I don't think Ankalaev should get a trilogy fight. Carlos Ulberg, that if Pereira is going to fight again at light heavyweight, that's the fight we need to see. Another powerful, dangerous striker who's able to pick his shots well. If Pereira is at light heavyweight, that's the one we need to see. Potentially a Yan rematch as well. Maybe he might want to get that Yan. He didn't lose to Yan, but Yan gave him his hardest fight, right? So maybe that, and then anybody below that isn't interested in me. Jiri, well, if Pereira fights Tom, then it should be Jiri versus Ulberg for a vacant title. Or Jiri versus Ankalaev. Because those two haven't fought each other, and Yuri's already said he doesn't like Ankalaev. He said when Ankalaev comes to the PI, he's a nice guy, but then everything he says on Twitter, he's not a nice guy. So little bit of backstory there. Maybe they could fight, would be good. And then next for Ankalaev, I mean, yeah, no, I kind of already said it. You know, he could fight Jiri. He'd fight a Yannick. Oh, Yan would actually be, that would be good. Ankalaev versus Yan, because they drew, so that would be a very good rematch to make a couple years down the line as well. and that was for the title as well. So, and they didn't give Ankalaev another fight. So, yeah, man, I forgot Ankalaev already fought for the title, man. People moving like, oh, the UFC are blackballed. He already had a title fight, man. He drew a Yan. Allow it. So he's had 3 title fights and he lost 2 of them. Yeah, whatever, man. This is you lot's goat. But in terms of, I think that's about it, to be honest. You know what? I'm gonna give a couple predictions for UFC Fight Night Oliveira versus Gamrot while I'm here, because I might not find time to break down this card or the couple fights that I'm interested in breaking down, because as per the UFC's what they like to do, because we're in Brazil, just put all the Brazilian bums on there. We don't care. Put all the Brazilian bums on the Brazil card. No one knows who these motherfuckers are, bro. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, are you serious? Mohamed Usman. It's 2025. Vitor Petrino, what? Oh, wow. Moves to heavyweight, wow. Khan Offley, whoa, man. Donato Deniz, whoa, man. Stacking the fuck out of this card. Vicente Luque versus Joe Alvarez is a good fight, to be fair. That's a good fight. I'll go with... I gotta go with Joe Alvarez, man. I don't think I can pick Luque anymore, even though he did look good in his last fight and he subbed out that black French guy. I can't remember what his name was, Sidibe or something. And then co-main event, Davison Figueiredo versus Montel Jackson. Definitely going Davison Figueiredo. Montel Jackson's not a bad little fighter, to be fair. And I think he's on a bit of a win streak too. Big win streak, 6-fight win streak. Beaten a couple of decent guys that you would have heard of. Damon Blackshear, Julio Arce, Daniel Marcos. Nothing crazy, but this is the step up, right? But like, if you're looking to move an unranked guy or low-ranked guy up into the upper echelon, Figueiredo's not really the way to do it, because Figueiredo's one of the best fighters in the UFC. I mean, crazy. Figueiredo's so good. I'm picking him out. I can't pick against Figueiredo. And the main event, Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot. This is weird, right? Because I'm going Gamrot. I think it's going to be similar to the Armand fight. I think Gamrot's going to be able to nullify that grappling of Charles, because Charles' grappling is good when he's able to be in control, and not in the sense that he's shooting takedowns and he's getting positional dominance, more in the sense that his grappling comes to life when he knocks someone down and it snatches up a submission, or there's a scramble and he's able to get it back, or something like that. In these hectic, chaotic moments, he's able to really thrive with his grappling. But in the slower paced fights, Mateusz Gamrot, is good with that. He's able to excel in that, and that's how I feel like this is going to go. I think it's going to be, obviously in the striking, Oliveira should have an advantage, because Gamrot's not much of a striker. He's not bad striker, has some power on him. So if he's able to really connect on that chin of Charles, it might not look good for Charles. But in the striking, I reckon Gamrot's going to be circling, he's going to be moving backwards, Oliveira's going to be moving forward. I feel like Oliveira's going to be able to utilise his kicks decently. He should be looking for round kicks, really, because I think Gamrot's going to be trying to circle. And also, knees won't be bad for Oliveira, because Gamrot's definitely going to be shooting takedowns. But in terms of Gamrot, I think he just needs to look for big, powerful one-shotters for Oliveira's chin on the feet. I don't think he's going to be doing well with his combinations here, because of Oliveira's speed and the way he's able to sort of move around. So he should be looking for sort of big one-hitter quitters on the feet and takedowns. Just be... I think if Gamrot is the typical wrestler with an overhand, he'll probably win. And I think that is what he's going to do, because he's a pretty good game planner. So I'm going to go with Mateusz Gamrot there. Oh, yeah. Joel Alvarez, I'm going to go with a second-round knockout. Davison Figueiredo, 3-round decision. And I'm going to go for the main event. Mateusz... No, I'm going Charles Oliveira. I think that he's got more dynamic weapons than Gamrot, and I think the grappling will be close enough to where the judges aren't going to give whole rounds to Gamrot simply because of grappling dominance. So that's about it from me. Broke down UFC 320, some of the guys who I think they should fight next, those winners and losers. Gave a couple predictions here for UFC Fight Night Oliveira versus Gamrot in Brazil. And yeah, man, that's about it for me. I've been Evan from Lonely Stoner Podcast. Peace.